65% of senior corporate executives believe that being an introvert is a massive barrier to leadership. For decades, corporate culture has preached that the loudest, most charismatic voice in the room and is the only one destined for the highest levels of management. However, research from the National Bureau of Economic Research proves that this deeply ingrained belief is a complete myth. In fact, their data reveals that companies led by introverted chief executive officers routinely and consistently outperform those run by highly extroverted leaders. The very traits society labels as weaknesses are actually a massive strategic advantage. Welcome to the channel. I am Dr. Arthur Sterling, and today we are unpacking the hidden power of the quiet mind. We are going to explore why the traditional, dominating boss is rapidly becoming obsolete in modern business. What specific psychological advantage do introverted individuals possess that allows them to quietly dominate the corporate world? The answer lies in a fundamental difference in human behavior, and the truth will permanently change how you view the quietest person at your workplace. Let us begin. 1. The extrovert leadership myth. We have been conditioned from a young age to confuse confidence with competence. In school, the student who raises their hand first gets the gold star. In the corporate world, this translates to the charisma bias. Society naturally defaults to extroverts for leadership roles because they are talkative, socially dominant, and quick to pitch ideas. We assume the loudest person in the room is also the smartest. But this bias creates a massive blind spot. According to the Myers-Briggs Company, despite making up 56.8% of the global population, introverts account for only 39% of top executives in the United States. The extrovert ideal is so ingrained that many quiet professionals are overlooked for promotions simply because they do not match the traditional, loud executive archetype. Yet, the reality is far more interesting. Look closely at the C-suite, and you will find that as many as 40% of executives secretly describe themselves as introverted. They have successfully climbed the corporate ladder, but they are not doing it by shouting over their peers. Instead, they leverage quiet observation. Take Tim Cook at Apple, for instance. He's famously known as a quiet, behind-the-scenes executive. He did not succeed by mimicking the fiery, extroverted style of his predecessor. He succeeded by being an adept listener and understanding the deeper, intricate dynamics of his team. Introverts do not need to be the center of attention to lead effectively. They orchestrate the talent around them. 2. Leading proactive teams. What exactly happens when a quiet leader is put in charge of a highly energetic, ambitious team? The dynamic shifts dramatically, and it fundamentally comes down to the management of ego. Picture a highly enthusiastic employee pitching a brilliant, unconventional strategy during a board meeting. A traditionally extroverted leader, accustomed to commanding the spotlight, might unconsciously perceive this initiative as a threat to their authority. They might interrupt the pitch, reshape the concept to make it their own, or simply talk completely over their staff. This behavior unintentionally crushes team morale and ultimately stifles innovation. Introverted leaders operate on an entirely different wavelength. They do not feel a desperate need to be the loudest or smartest person in the room. This quiet approach is not just a pleasant psychological theory, it is backed by concrete financial data. In a fascinating 2010 study conducted by Adam Grant, Francesca Gino, and David Halfman, researchers analyzed the daily performance of various pizza delivery franchises. They wanted to see exactly how the personality traits of the store manager interacted with the behavior of their employees on the floor. The financial results were incredibly revealing. When proactive employees brought fresh ideas to the table, perhaps proposing a much faster way to route evening deliveries or a more efficient method for prepping ingredients, the introverted leaders absolutely thrived. The data showed that introverted leaders managing these proactive teams generated 14% higher profits than their highly extroverted counterparts. The mechanism behind this success is remarkably simple. Introverts are typically more modest, far less socially assertive, and inherently more receptive to upward feedback. Instead of dominating the executive conversation, they actively listen. They provide their team with the necessary psychological safety to experiment, and most importantly, they actually implement the profitable ideas their staff brings forward. They act as a quiet catalyst for deep collaboration rather than acting as a loud bottleneck of executive control. To be completely scientifically accurate, that same study did reveal a crucial nuance. When the franchise employees were entirely passive and simply waited around for explicit orders, the extroverted leaders actually performed better, generating 16% higher profits. Extroverts are undeniably excellent at rallying a passive crowd. But let us be brutally honest about modern business dynamics. No successful, forward-thinking company today wants an entire workforce of passive order takers. The modern corporate environment demands proactive, self-starting innovators to survive. If you are hiring incredibly smart, capable professionals, you have to let them do their jobs. An introverted boss inherently understands this dynamic perfectly. They do not waste valuable time managing every tiny operational detail or demanding constant public validation. They create a secure, stable environment where proactive talent can fully execute their vision. They comfortably step back, fade out of the spotlight, and allow their team to secure the victory. 3. Managing risk and strategy. We know that quiet leaders build incredibly proactive teams, but what happens when a company faces a catastrophic market crash or a high-stakes strategic pivot? This is where the introverted brain reveals its most powerful, hidden advantage, and it comes down to basic human biology. When an extroverted leader encounters a massive new business opportunity, their brain relies heavily on dopamine, the chemical associated with immediate reward. They see a flashy corporate acquisition, feel a rush of excitement, and want to sprint toward the finish line. They are biologically wired to take big, impulsive leaps. But the introverted brain takes a completely different, highly calculated route. Information in a quiet mind travels through a much longer neural pathway, one heavily influenced by the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. This chemical rewards deep thought, intense focus, and long-term planning. Before an introverted executive signs a multi-million-dollar deal, their brain forces them to access past memories, analyze future scenarios, and painstakingly evaluate every single potential point of failure. They are not being timid or indecisive. They are essentially running a highly advanced, internal simulation of the entire business strategy before they ever speak a single word. In a booming economy, a fast-acting, risk-taking executive might look like a genius. They aggressively chase market trends and loudly celebrate short-term victories. But business is never a permanent upward line. When the market inevitably shifts, or a completely unforeseen crisis hits, that same impulsive nature becomes a massive corporate liability. Ego drives the flashy leader to double down on bad baits, because admitting defeat would mean losing face in front of the board of directors. They will sink millions of dollars into a failing project simply because their personal identity is tied to its success. An introverted leader is naturally insulated from this destructive cycle of ego. Because they never demanded the spotlight in the first place, they do not feel a desperate need to blindly defend a failing strategy just to look strong. If the internal financial data clearly shows that a product line is bleeding cash, a quiet leader will calmly and ruthlessly sever the loss. They detach their personal pride from the business equation. This makes them incredibly dangerous competitors in a volatile market because they are willing to make cold, calculated pivots while their louder rivals are still busy arguing with the press. Think of it like navigating a massive commercial cargo ship through a dense, unpredictable storm. The highly extroverted captain rely on sheer confidence, ordering the crew to push full steam ahead, hoping to bravely break through to clear waters. It is bold, it is heroic, and it is a fantastic way to crash into a hidden reef. The introverted captain, however, immediately cuts the engine speed. They lock themselves in the navigation room, silently study the radar arrays, consult the historical weather charts, and map out a slow, deliberate course that absolutely guarantees the survival of the vessel and everyone on board. This careful, methodical approach to strategy is exactly why quiet chief executive officers consistently steer struggling companies out of bankruptcy. They do not hold endless, loud meetings just to hear themselves speak. Instead, they absorb massive amounts of written data and listen intently to their specialized advisors without interrupting or overpowering the conversation. When you take longer to make a strategic decision, you inevitably gather a much higher quality of information. You actually hear the quiet warnings from junior analysts that a dominating, fast-moving boss would have instantly dismissed as mere pessimism. Ultimately, sustainable corporate growth is not about making the loudest, most aggressive move possible. It is about making the correct move at the exact right time, and having the strict discipline to do absolutely nothing when the risks outweigh the potential rewards. The quietest person in the boardroom is often the one holding the most carefully constructed battle plan. They are not waiting for permission to speak. They are simply waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when they finally do execute their strategy, the competition rarely sees it coming. 4. Yes, with proactive teams. So, do introverts unequivocally make the absolute best leaders? The definitive answer is yes, but with one incredibly vital condition. They are the ultimate leaders specifically when they are paired with highly proactive, capable teams. Let us look at a landmark study conducted by researchers Adam Grant, Francesca Gino, and David Harvman. They discovered a fascinating dynamic in the modern workplace. When a highly extroverted leader manages a team of self-starters, their inherent need to be the center of attention actually stifles innovation. The loud leader subconsciously views proactive team members as a threat to their authority or their limelight. But when you put an introverted leader in charge of that exact same group of ambitious, driven employees, the results are explosive. The study found that introverted managers leading proactive teams generated 14% higher profits than their extroverted counterparts. 14% is a massive margin in the corporate world. Why does this happen? Because a quiet leader does not need to constantly prove they are the smartest person in the room. They do not require a cheering section to validate their ego. When a capable employee brings a brilliant new idea to the table, an extroverted boss might impulsively try to put their own spin on it just to claim some of the glory. An introverted boss takes a completely different path. They listen intently, process the information, and simply ask what resources the employee needs to execute the plan. They provide a sturdy, unshakable foundation of psychological safety. They are perfectly content to stand in the shadows and let their talented team shine in the spotlight. Think about the historic transition at Apple. 4 years, the company was driven by a famously charismatic, dominating founder. When Tim Cook took the reins, many loud critics thought his quiet, behind-the-scenes demeanor would eventually destroy the corporate culture. Instead, Cook succeeded brilliantly by being an extraordinarily adept listener. He fundamentally understood the deeper dynamics of his specialized team. He let his experts be experts. He did not need to be the lone visionary standing on a glowing stage. Instead, he quietly orchestrated the genius of others, steering the company to unprecedented financial heights. In the modern business landscape, where complex innovation happens at lightning speed, you do not always need a cheerleader with a megaphone. You need a strategist with a master plan. You need a leader with the strategic patience to listen, the absolute humility to step back, and the quiet confidence to let brilliant people do brilliant work. The loud, dominating executive might win the press conference, but the quiet, calculating introvert consistently wins the war. If you found this strategic breakdown valuable, gently tap that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of human behavior and success. I'm Dr. Arthur. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful voice in the boardroom is the one doing the listening.